Yes, sir. JD, take like 3, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Let's get to it. You feeling good though? You feeling all right?
Feeling swell, splendid, extravagant.
Very proper answer. Extremely proper response.
Yeah, bro. I've been diving into the thesaurus lately. So
No, but all right. So again, like I was telling you, I was telling you this earlier.
yeah.
But I was listening to this podcast, and at the beginning of the podcast, the 2 co-hosts, they essentially asked each other, at least one of them asked the other, what was like the biggest lesson that you've learned this week? So yeah,
Should we make that a thing?
I don't know if we're gonna make it a thing, but I was very curious. Now that it popped into my mind as soon as we started, and I'm curious to know.
Yeah, I feel like this week something God's been highlighting to me and something I've been learning and sitting under is just the importance of faith. I feel like that's something because it started with I was reading the Old Testament and I felt led to go through the Gospels again. So I started reading through Matthew and
Is it the Old Testament?
Yeah, I was in the Old Testament. Why are you questioning that?
The Old Testament?
No, I said I was reading in the Old Testament, and then the Spirit led me to go to the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
Okay,
so
okay.
I was in the Old Testament, and I was like, okay, let's go back to the New Testament and read the Gospel. So I was in Matthew, and I was just noticing it was like, I don't know why, it was the thing that was standing out to me is that with every miracle that Jesus performed, faith had something to do with it. It wasn't in all the miracles, but in like 90% of them, it had something to do about faith. And one part or one miracle in particular that really stood out to me was there's a Canaanite woman that walks up to Jesus and asks for him to heal her, and he refuses initially. He's like, nah, like I can't give to the dogs what is like sacred or whatever, right? And then because of her faith, he decided, he's like, you know what? He saw her face, he's like, you know what? I go back on what I said, I'll heal you, and you're healed. And I don't know, I just thought that was so powerful. Like your faith can literally move, right? Can move God to make certain decisions, and like and I don't know, that's just something that's been highlighted to me, like let it be done to you according to your faith. It's impossible to please God without faith. Like I don't know, it's just things lately like that I've been noticing while I was reading that's just definitely been highlighting that to me. So
Faith.
yeah, it's simple, but it's something I feel like I needed to hear right now. So
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
what about you? What you been reading?
Mine, I would have to say, so we did a poll yesterday. We put up a poll up and we asked, like, you all to ask questions or whatever. And one of the questions was, what's the most important thing y'all did to grow closer to God? And I replied and said, making a very conscious and real decision to follow him no matter what. So telling God, I offer no resistance to your plan, your will, and your way. Because you don't just give God your life. You don't just give your life to God at salvation. It's something you have to do every day. And so I think that the sentiment of just, I offer no resistance. Right? Like no resistance to the standard you have for my life, the purpose that you're walking me into this next season that may even seem uncomfortable, no matter what that looks like really just trusting God with your life.
Yeah.
Because I was watching a few clips of the episode we did with Alexis not too long ago. And that's one thing that she said is just like, yo, literally just trusting God with my life. And I thought that was really profound because sometimes we can be the thing in the way of what he's trying to get to us because we want to wrestle and just like, be in this state of like, no, I don't know, right? Just that constant resistance.
Exactly.
And not just allowing God to do what he does. So I thought that was powerful, something I needed to be reminded of. And I was like, yeah. I was like, that's the one.
Yeah, I feel that one heavy. I've been on the
100%.
same type of timing for sure.
So you ready?
We
to
can
tap in?
get into it. Let's go.
All right, yo, what's up? It's your boy, D Starks.
Starks Artist.
And you are now tuned in to the Just Different Podcast, where we talk everything faith, life, and culture. We're super glad to have y'all back. Episode 64.
Yeah.
Another one. We actually just got back. We just got off of live, actually. It was super dope. We had our friends come on, John, Eric, and Laz. It was amazing. Stayed on there for like a while.
Yeah.
Had a great
y'all missed
conversation.
out if y'all wasn't there.
100%. So look, yo, if you're free next Wednesday or any Wednesday after that for the rest of the year at 8 p.m., definitely come on. After you study, whatever you need to get done, say what's up. Just
pop
say
your
hi.
head in.
Yeah, you know what it is. But that was great. But so yeah, we ready to tap in?
Let's go.
Go get into it.
Let's go.
All right. So for this episode, I was just thinking, and this has really been like the past week, rather like week and a half, 2 weeks, about, I've really been in like a state of, I would say, like reflection honestly. Going into the last 2 months of this year, I think I mentioned that last week, right? Going into the last 2 months of this year, I've been like, dang, like there's been so much transition, there's been so much change, been so many things that happened, even with this 1 year alone. And I was just like really thinking about like the past, and I was like, thinking about moments that like, oh man, like I wish it still looked like this, or I was really like, caught up in like these amazing memories and like, even mistakes or things I would have made, just kind of like really thinking back and pondering on those things. And I was on Facebook, and
Facebook is crazy.
I know it's crazy. Like honest, I literally every time I say that, it's insane.
That's
It don't
what I'm
even
saying.
sound. It seriously doesn't sound right. Anytime I say
I was
it.
gonna let it slide, but
I like that's so. Cause anyways, bro.
let's just
Yeah, I was on Facebook for whatever reason. I don't know why. And Matthew Stevenson, he made this post, that kind of just went off what I was thinking. Like that reflection time that I was in, and he said, I feel impressed to warn you about a very subtle yet common weapon and tactic of hell that's used to prevent people from their destinies and restrict their access to their potentials. It's the snare called nostalgia. Memory, when used the right way, can be a faith booster. The memory can be a powerful vehicle for confidence in the unseen and the promised before it's actualized. The memory can house pictures and illustrations of seasons, moments, and spaces where God's hand was swift in a circumstance or in the direction of a promise, although it had showed no signs of manifestation. However, the danger with nostalgia is that there is a risk of hooking you at the emotional level, soaring you through your psychological self, and drawing you in reverse relationally. I know many people with mismanaged memory that for the exact same reason a dog returns to his vomit, something previously digested and processed to look for food, something that's intended to energize you for the future, so do people return to their past. As the saying goes, I'd rather stay in hell because at least I know all the street names. Don't compromise your future because of familiarity. Don't be bound by nostalgia. It could be the reason behind your lack of vision. And I was like, yeah.
I like that.
That's the one. I was literally kind of like just sitting in that point of nostalgia and just like reminiscing in this hit. And really the part that kind of stuck out was I know many people with mismanaged memory that for the same exact reason a dog returned to his vomit, right?
Yeah.
Vomit, which is something previously digested, processed that you've gone through, right? Chewed to look for food, right? Food being something that's like intended to like obviously energize you and give you the capacity to walk out what you're presently in or going into. So do people do with their past. And that parallel there. And I'm like, yo, that was so true. So especially that's essentially what we're really going to be talking about today is like when it comes to like nostalgia, reminiscing, or just your past in general, like how to handle that well. Kind of like, of course, with everyone kind of going into like the last 2 months of this year, getting prepared for 2023, but also looking back on 2022, how do you manage the things that have had happen like recently or even like way back in your past? And I think when it comes to this conversation, like when you're thinking about the past, you're either like pondering on something that you've like really enjoyed that you don't like, want to let go of, or something that you wish you would have done differently, and like this kind of gets into somewhat of a conversation of regret even. Yeah. And I think when it comes to regret, this is super interesting because I think it's something that we actually have to realize and genuinely acknowledge, because I think, and I won't necessarily make this specific to Christians, I think just in general, sometimes we can like it can be over romanticized, like in the sense of like people are like, you may have heard this before, like, yo, I don't believe in regrets. Oh yeah. Right. That's not something I live with or live in. Cause I used to be one of those people. I used to say it all the time, like, no, like it's not true. Like that's not something that's real. And I think I was like thinking about that more. I'm like, yo, like what is actually like regret? You feel what I'm saying? And I looked it up, and literally all it says is regret is the emotion of wishing one had made a different decision in the past. Right? And so, of course, everyone can look back on their life and find something that they wish they would have done differently.
Most definitely.
Honestly, I mean, you can look at like literally yesterday of like, yo, I wish I would have like not gone out to eat, or I wish I would have like stayed in, or I wish I would have gone to sleep earlier, whatever that looks like, Yeah. And so I think when it comes to regret, it's not something you shouldn't live in regret, but you do have to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
You should acknowledge it. It's something that you have to be real with. 'Cause I think sometimes we can just it can just be over dramatized in a lot of ways, right? And that is one way in which like the enemy uses a tactic for you to be locked to your past. Is you living in it and it being something that you stay in, like you still thinking about, dang, I wish I would have, man,
Right.
texted them, bro. Wish I would have hit them back.
Wasting the time away.
I'm saying just wasting time and staying in this cycle of like what could have been, what should have been.
Right.
And so when I was thinking about this, one of the biggest things I've had to realize is you have to learn your lesson and move on, right? Someone said this in a live last week, but it was regret is the weight of a mistake. So if you never accept a lesson from the mistake, you'll most likely always stay in regret, you know? And I'm big on the fact that like what isn't measured can't be improved. And so like if you're never actually realistic about your mistakes and your shortcomings, you'll never truly be able to learn from them. So yeah, when it comes to this aspect of like your past of things like, yo, like you wish you would have done differently, or this things that are negative that you may be beating yourself up about in a lot of shame or condemnation, I think it's something that you just have to actualize and realize. Because sometimes people can be in that whole thing like of I never take L's, just lessons. You know how people be on that?
No, for real.
You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like fam, like you may have got a lesson from that, but it may have still been an L.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't just kind of like brush over that and not acknowledge it, because that's something that you can just like kind of keep in the back of your head and it just be like a cycle you're going through. So I think that's a big part, because like the snare is like I wish I would have moments that keep you paralyzed to where you're at, so you can't get to where you're going, right? And I think that when it comes to getting over regret and these mistakes that you make, it's not something that you feel, it's a decision that you make.
A decision, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like it's not something that you feel, it's a decision that you make. So it's kind of the same thing with sometimes like, yo, I don't feel forgiven.
Right.
I don't feel like God's forgiven me, or like I'm really, you know what I mean? Like he could have really like looked over these things, but it's a decision you make.
Yeah.
Right. To accept the love of God, that gift of forgiveness. And I think when it comes to like really moving on from these things in your past, it's a decision you make, right, to face these things and start the process of healing, to like get past them.
Yeah, no, that decision part is big. I think for me, regret is something I definitely struggled with in the past. Over this past year, though, I've definitely developed a different perspective on it, and God has allowed me like see it in a new light. So for me personally, when I was really reflecting and looking at my own life, any place I found regret, I also found a lack of faith. And this stems from like the verse of Romans 8:28, and it talks about all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. So the way I was looking at it is like, okay, any place I have regret, that's because I'm thinking like, oh no, like God can't erase that, or God can't work that out for my good, right? God can't cast that as far as the east is from the west. So for me in my life, that's the way I was looking at it. And I'm like, okay, there's a correlation between my faith in God and these regrets that I have. So for me, that's why I said the decision part is big, because I had to make a conscious decision and shift my perspective. And I remember it literally, and the crazy part about this is this conversation is so timely, because just the other day when I was journaling, before we even talked about we were going to be, talking about this topic, something that I wrote down is, it's so backwards that I can find thankfulness in a place that I once harbored so much regret. And something that I noticed is just the fact that regret will turn into gratitude when you stop looking at it like something you want to change and start looking at it like something God brought me through. So that was the conscious decision, though. Like you were talking about, you have to make a decision to start looking at it in a different light. That's how my regret turned into gratitude, right? Because it's like, okay, instead of looking at it like, dang, like I really had to go through that, like that sucked, that was rough, I wish I could change that. Now I'm looking at it like, you know what, God, I'm thankful because it did suck. But although it sucked, you brought me out of it, right? And even turned it around for my good. So it's just about that perspective change and that decision, like you were talking about.
That's huge. That's so
saying,
fire. What was that?
What was what?
The regret to grateful piece. It's funny how I can.
Oh, I was talking about how it seems so backwards that I can find thankfulness in a place that harbors so much regret.
That's so fire.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of two things. One, this is ringing in my head. And it's something someone told me. Well, Erica, Mama Diggs, told me last weekend. She said, "Who God's made you, or what God's made you, is better."
That's so.
what God is
That's
like,
so
who
fire,
God has
though.
made you is
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
And that basically reminds me of what you were saying. Sometimes when we get caught in regret, I think it's because we don't think that there's better.
Yeah.
And we think that what we may have been chasing can't compare to what God's actually trying to get to us. And
That's
so we're
good.
we're replaying all these scenarios in your head, like, dang, why not cut them off? Why not ghost them? Maybe I should have stayed in a relationship. I wish I would have done this. This could have happened. And we're not putting faith in the future that God has set before us, the person that He's made us, the path that He has set, and it, like, before us. And so I think that made me realize that.
Yeah, that plays into it really big. And I actually have something like that written down. It's crazy you mentioned that. I said, if you don't think there's any better coming on its way, the only place to go is to focus on the good that already happened. And I think
yo,
I'm coming with the one-liners today.
run it back, bro. What?
If I don't think there's any better coming on the way, the only direction I'm going to turn is to focus on the good that already happened. And I think that can play into it as well. Like this like fear of the future can like tie you to the past, because I think even people and like younger people, we have such a weird view of like growing up, and like we think responsibility is prison. And since we're like looking at the future, like, man, like this is all going to suck. I'm going to have the responsibilities, bills, et cetera, et cetera. So because I think that my future is not going to be any better, the only places to go is to relish in the moments, like, in high school when it was fun and carefree, right? So in a way, you gotta be watched for that too, because your fear of like the unknown in the future will tie you to your past, right? Because you feel like that's the only place you can go to get any type of like, good feeling from like memories and etc. So yeah, that was a good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
And it goes back to what we always say, like, there is more, right?
Yeah.
There is better too. There's better too.
I like
better
that.
on the other end
Is
of
that the title?
Oh, that may be it. That may be it.
Yeah.
But and also number 2, what I wanted to mention is whenever you mention it's so ironic that I can find thankfulness in a place I found so much regret in.
Yeah.
We talked about this while we were on live. I was literally, when I was looking this we're doing research for like this topic and just like really like, thinking on it.
Yeah.
I was going through like just a few questions online, and I was searching, and the card game We're Not Really Strangers.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
You heard of it? Okay, yeah. I was looking that up. I got on that for some reason, and one question that I saw was, what mistake are you most grateful for? And that really it took me by surprise. Like, I'm stuttering.
Yeah,
now.
right.
Like, it took me by surprise. I had never heard or saw a question of that nature,
Right.
ever. And it was almost like a perspective change of like, I never even think of her posing a question like that.
Right. Like
Of, like,
regret and thankfulness in
and
the same
gratitude.
sentence.
Yeah.
Like,
what does that even mean? And I was like, yo, wow. So I want to ask you now.
Uh-huh.
We talked about it online, but what is a mistake you're most grateful
A
for?
mistake I'm most grateful for. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna what I previously had said. So there was a relationship I had got in, right, and I didn't necessarily go to God before I got into it, right? Kind of just jumped into it, didn't really ask him what that dynamic was supposed to look like, et cetera, et cetera. I got into it, and then he told me like I needed to leave the relationship. Like, he kept nudging on me, like, oh, like, you can't be here, and I said no, right, and I resisted, and I stayed there, and a lot of like calamity and bad things came from that. But I think there's a couple things I learned from that. Like, one thing I learned was just like the weight of my no and the importance of my yes, if that makes sense. Like, what can come from me being disobedient to God? Because up until that point, like, I've never really done anything like that. So it's kind of like a slap on the wrist, like, yo, this is what happens. But also on the flip side of that, like, he turned that bad into good, right? And I learned that lesson from it, like, kind of coming back to the conversation. But yeah, I think that's definitely because that was like my first like rebellious thing I did in terms of like my relationship with God. So I feel like that was like honestly something I'm really grateful for, because I feel like it needed to happen in a sense.
Fact.
What about you?
Yeah, I would say, there's a few that kind of like stick out. I think I have a very similar situation that happened with the relationship I knew I shouldn't have been in.
Right.
But I think also another big thing was going to college. I would say it's like the mistake I'm most grateful for, because I think for me, going into college was just kind of like the right thing to do. Was the next step to do. It wasn't something I really consulted God about or thought about for myself. It was just like, okay, right, you've been academically like, inclined your entire career or whatever. It's like, okay, the next step is what like you're going to university. And so I'm grateful for it because I think during that time, although like it was extremely rough for me, like the roughest part of my life in terms of like just like battling with like depression, like, you know, struggles with my identity, and also just like being even compromising what I've always known and believed, because I'm like surrounded by so much like pressure from the world and the culture. I think one thing it did for me was it challenged me in ways I never thought it would. It challenged me in my faith, right, with things I've always believed just because it's been taught to me, and I never found it for myself. Like, because I was encountered with a lot of people who had different viewpoints and perspectives and even theologies that I had never even encountered or known. And so having those conversations, interacting with those people made me really question and think like, yo, what do I believe? It not only outside my faith, but it challenged everything I ever thought I once knew. And I think everyone needs really that phase of like actually finding what you believe for yourself, right? You know for you that this is the truth. Exactly. This is fact. And so I think that's one of the biggest things it did for me, and I'm so grateful for it because it matured me. Like, I always tell people, like, the last 2 years, I feel like I've been in this accelerated process of growth. And so I think that's definitely like the biggest thing for me, because it just, I don't know the person I would be today if I didn't do that. Not at all. Like I couldn't.
What was that question again? What regret?
What mistake are you most grateful for?
That's one of those questions, bro.
It's one of them.
That's one of the ones you gotta ask everyone you meet. Like,
no, for a fact. Yeah. It's one of them ones for real.
What mistake are you most grateful for?
But yeah, and I want to ask y'all too. Put it in the comments. I want to know.
Hey, I need y'all answers for sure. I'm reading through all those.
I want to know. But so when it comes to like how the past can restrict you and kind of like hold you to where you're at, so you're not really going into your future. Obviously, we're kind of talking more like negatives, like things that we wish we would have done differently when it comes to like regret, mistakes, etc. But the one thing that I don't think is always talked about and is highlighted here is the aspect of nostalgia, which we hit on really unintentionally last week. We were talking about the Disney movies, because like this is the part of your past and memories that aren't necessarily bad. Right. These are the great times. These are the things that brought you a lot of joy, that brought you a lot of happiness, a lot of peace, right, and our prosperity or whatever. And something that I put down about this is the fact that sometimes your current failure could be attached to your last victory.
Whoa.
You know?
I like that.
Your current failure could be attached to your last victory, right? Because you're so stagnant and paralyzed by, it used to be so, right? Yep. I remember those times when it was, like, you know what I mean? Like, you just get so caught up in the feeling and dynamic of what one season looked like. You're always comparing it to the season you're walking into, and God's trying to take you into something different. It won't feel the same. It won't look the same. You know, like, it's not going to be the same. And so like, if we are so caught up at like, that one season being the best, like what you mentioned, being the best that it's ever going to get, or being like the barometer for like all life is going to be, then you know what I mean, you're going to stay stagnant.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this other day in terms of like our hobbies. This was like a random thought, because I was thinking about video games. Someone had asked me, and they were like, do you play video games? And I said no. And the reason I was kind of like surprised, because like I used to play video games a lot. Like, as you know, I used to fiend. I was a fiend, bro. I was playing every day. You was a fiend. But I was thinking about the sense of like hobbies, and how sometimes we don't allow like our hobbies to like grow with us. And sometimes we'll get in states of like, people will be in present time, but they feel so like lost and confused and depressed, because it's like, okay, all the stuff I used to find so much joy in, I'm no longer like fulfilled when I'm doing these things anymore, and I'm no longer finding like any type of fun from them, right? And that led me to the thought, and that's what kind of like ties this in right now, is the fact that like sometimes when you grow up, like, you just mature out of certain things, and because we're so tied to like where we once found fun and where we once had so much fun memories, we continue to try to do these things. Like, I know people still trying to play video games, and they're like, man, I hate playing video games. I'm like, why are you still playing? It's like they're stuck to like what used to find them so much fun that they're not going out and finding new hobbies, right? That's something I noticed in myself. Is like, I put down old stuff that I didn't find fun, right? And I let go of that nostalgia, and I started picking up new hobbies, bro. Like, journaling, like random stuff, like going for walks, like silly stuff. But that was something I was thinking about in terms of just like, that's more like practical sense. Something I realized like with hobbies is like, we try to like get tied to that nostalgia, and it's like holding you back from like finding what you can actually, new stuff you can enjoy, new stuff you can do.
Yeah, I think, it can go into even like a conversation about maybe arrested development. Because a lot of people like unintentionally, because I've been here before, you're trying to like literally you're trying to recreate, like you're just consistently in a point of like trying to recreate a moment and what it was. Like I remember like, I think there's this freestyle I've been listening to lately by La Russell, and he says that when you get out the mud, don't forget about the mildew.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's not even about like even getting out of a particular season. It's about like what it leaves you with. So I say that to say, whenever I did leave college, I was subconsciously doing things, trying to recreate what what that was, the season I was in. Right, like I would stay up like mad late. Like even small stuff like like how I had my room organized and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's because I was so comfortable in that. That's the last place I felt like I found some type of comfort or stability. That is what I kept running back to. Right. Although I knew this thing was not the thing that was giving me energy. Going back to how we started this at the top, right? A dog that goes returns to its vomit, something that's already processed to try to give it fuel for its future.
Yep.
It's just not going to work.
Something that like came to my head when you were saying that is like don't try to recreate the old moments, let the new moments create you, because I feel like that's even like a part of life, like even like just living in the present and learning lessons from things that you go through, and that's what's creating you, that's what's molding you. But if you're not allowing these new moments to actually do that, and you're so stuck on, like you said, in this space of like, oh, I gotta recreate that, or like I had fun doing that summer, like let's make this that same summer, and it's like, you know what I mean, and you're not allowing these new moments to like really take shape in you, so I like that. That's a bar
for a fact. So how do you use memory in a positive way? Because like you said in the post, like it can be something that's a faith booster.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
I think our faith in God is very much contingent on our history with him. So like what things that he's brought you through and what he's done, like that's a big like contributor to like your faith and what makes it so strong. But if you like stick on it too much, that's what like can hinder you and like put God in this box. But I think in I don't know, I don't want to say balance, because I feel like I chalk everything up to balance, bro, but I feel like that's what it is.
What
like,
do you mean?
You have to get in a space where you're able to take the, okay, let me word it like this. So I actually had to explain it to me like this, and it'll be easier to explain it like this. So someone once told me the past is the parent of the present. So everything you're living in right now is a product of what was birthed from the past, right? So the way I looked at that and put a spin on that is like the past is the mother and like the present is like a son, right? So I started thinking about like my relationship with my mom. I love my mom and I always will, but as time goes on, you have to grow on your own and stop becoming so dependent on her, right? And start standing on your own 2 feet. So going back to that analogy of the time, right? The present and the past. The past is what molded you, right? And you have an attachment to the past. You love the past, but you have to allow the present to like grow up and like stand on its own 2 feet. And yeah, I call my mom still, and I'm still in communication with her, but I'm not calling her up for every single issue I have. So it's like the same thing. Like in the present, like you can go look back at the past, like, yo, mom, like what's good? Like, yo, like how you doing? But don't be calling up the past for every single problem you have. So when you look at it like that, like a relationship between a mother and a son, that kind of helped me develop the new mindset on it. It's like, go back. You can revisit the past. You just can't stay there. Like I can go back to my old crib, but I'm not going to be sleeping here for the rest of my life type of thing. So yeah. So it's just that balance. So like you can go back and you need to pull from the good things, but don't allow yourself to like be like sucked into that and like stay there.
Yeah. That's good. And even with that, like obviously your relationship with your parents evolve, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a part of evolution. You feel what I'm saying? But it also become but that's also a conversation about like how you evolve as a person.
Yeah.
Do you feel what I'm saying? So like if you're still in a state of dependence and not having found a place where you're on your own too, right? You're still going to look at them as if they're the nurturers that they were, nurturers they were for you when you were 5 and 6. Right. So like, but as if you yourself are taking the steps to process and evolve, right? You no longer need them in that capacity.
Exactly.
Right. Not because you don't want them there. You're not going to speak to them as much, but like I'm now in a place to where it looks different. Right. So bringing back to the past and the present. If I'm not in a place where I have actually grown or matured from the place I was in my past, I'm always going to go back to it. Because I'm still the same individual at the emotional capacity I was in that moment. Right. But if I evolve and I mature, I can look back and be like, yo, that was amazing and great. But I no longer fit that season of my life.
Exactly.
I no longer fit and or am molded for what that was. 100%, bro. 100%.
Yeah.
That's fire. I love that. And the last thing I want to mention is neurologically, remembering something is almost the same as feeling it.
That's big.
And so I think that I put that note down because I think that, like Jordan was saying, our relationship with God is contingent upon our history with him. And I think that in moments where we are feeling discouraged or in despair and or maybe even lost, confused, or in a place of uncertainty and not really stability in our view of God or who he is to us, I think it's important to look back on the moments where that he was there, that he came through, like financially, right, for us in those moments, and or emotionally, in emotional support, or whatever that looked like for you, and that being like what you are allowing your memory to do in that time, right? As what we mentioned at the top of that faith booster for you to get through what you're feeling in a current moment. And so like even like literally looking back on those times, we mentioned it before, but like obviously when David approached Goliath, he was thinking about what happened in the field with the bear, right? What happened in the field with the lion, which gave him the confidence and courage to know, yo, if God was with me then, why would he stop walking with me now?
Exactly.
And so I think that's the same way that we do another aspect of how we definitely need to use our memory in order to like bring us closer and push us into a place of, this is funny how it all tying together, place of stronger faith when we're not in a moment where we feel as solidified in it.
Exactly.
You feel me?
Yeah. Something else I want to mention, this is my last point. I've been reading a book called Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis, and a point that was made in there kind of made me take this new perspective on the importance of the present, right? Because we're talking about the past, we're talking about taking the good from it, not staying in there. I also want to like make a point about the present and the importance of it. So what was said in the book is the present is the point at which time touches eternity, right? And God lives in eternity. So with eternity, the construct of time will cease to exist, or does cease to exist for God. So there is no tomorrow. There is no yesterday. In a way, it's just like a constant state of present, right? So that's one of the reasons why God wants us focused on the now and like sitting in the present and not, dwelling in the past or the future, because
he's not there.
He's not there. Because if he's in eternity, our concept of time, the present is where we are the most aligned with him and are most aligned with, his purpose and ultimately our his will and our purpose, right? So, yeah.
Oh, I hope that don't miss it. I hope that makes sense. So essentially, help me if I'm wrong. Let me break it down. It's the fact that God, he is eternal. He's outside of time. Right. So he is only ever present.
He's only ever present.
He's only ever present.
Exactly.
So when we're stuck in our past or too far into our future, we are now removing ourselves from the most intimate form of connection we can have with him, because he's not in either place, any of those places.
He's not there.
He's only present. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own. Why? Because I'm here. So is that
he's not there. Hit the nail on the head. Maybe that's the title.
Maybe that's why does it always come at the end of the? It always comes when we're at the end of the EP. He's not there.
He's not there,
man.
I promise you, he's not.
That'll preach, man. That is good. Yeah, we gonna end on that. Like, there's nothing. There's not. There's
That's
nothing
the
more,
one. Mic
There's
drop.
nothing more to add. But yeah, that's it. He's not there, y'all.
Hope y'all got a lot from it.
He's not there. So yeah, handle the past well. Don't be bound by nostalgia. It could be the reason for your lack of vision toward the future. Stay present.
Stay present.
I know what it is. So yeah, man, we appreciate y'all tuning in for another week. It's all love. Next Wednesday, you know where we at.
Yep.
IG Live,
At
8 p.m. Eastern. Be there. We back next Thursday at 3 p.m. So we'll check y'all out soon. As always, stay you.
Stay real.
And stay humble. We'll catch y'all next week. Much love.
Yeah.